In 1994, a few years after the fall of the Berlin Wall, Germany was reunited and the Soviet Union dissolved. The last remaining Russian soldiers finally left a military complex in Germany that very few people have set foot in since that day. Once home to as many as 75,000 Soviet men, women, and children. Wünsdorf, located about 25 miles from Berlin, was the high command for Soviet forces in Germany and the biggest Soviet military camp outside the USSR. But it also had shops, schools, and leisure facilities and was known as Little Moscow, with daily trains going to the Soviet capital. In today's episode of World Affairs, let's explore the complex of Wünsdorf in Germany, a place that once held significant importance and had a unique role during World War II and the Cold War as a crucial military facility. The complex is now under the auspices of the state of Brandenburg, but no money has been invested and no new owner has been found. The ravages of time have taken its toll. The faded yellow plastering is flaking off the facade. Windows are broken, a fuse box dangles off a wall, and wild animals such as martens have left trails of excrement on the dusty floors. This city is called the Forbidden City because the local German residents were rarely allowed to enter. Some of the vacated rooms inside the three-story offices complex recall the glory years of Soviet power in East Germany. One pale mural aggrandizes communism, showing a powerful hydroelectric power station and muscular workers on tractors. Outside the main building entrance gate, there's still an oversized statue of the Russian Communist revolutionary Vladimir Lenin. Despite many years having passed, one man still holds vivid memories of this city. Hagen Naumann, the caretaker of the Soviet military headquarters in Germany, was given permission to enter all the buildings of the city that remained off-limits for nearly 30 years since the Russian military left. Nevertheless, when the order came for troops and their families to withdraw, it still came as a shock to many of its inhabitants, who had come to think of Wünsdorf as home. It was a mad rush withdrawal, recalls Naumann, who was working at the time as a watchman. Uncertainty contributed to the chaos. Soldiers had no idea where they were going or whether they'd get accommodation. Some pooled money and bought buses so their families would have some shelter. When they departed after the final military parade, they left a vast site littered with 98,000 rounds of ammunition, 47,000 pieces of ordnance, 29.3 tons of munitions and rubbish, including chemicals, waste oil, oil paint, tires, batteries, and asbestos. Shops were left full of electronics, radios, TVs, and fridges. Families were in such a hurry they couldn't take everything. Houses were full of domestic appliances. Even pets were left behind. The pattern repeated itself throughout East Germany. No country outside the USSR had more Soviet troops, an estimated 380,000 soldiers and 180,000 civilians spread across 1,062 urban and rural locations when the Union collapsed in January 1991. They left behind a legacy of abandoned ruins. Near Wünsdorf alone, Sperrenberg Airfield is still abandoned, as are airfields at Rangsdorf, Oranienburg, and Solvadi, while many military camps still await new purpose. Most of the buildings in these former quasi-urban camps are off-limits, simply rotting from neglect. Authorities have bigger fish to fry. A host of East German enterprises went out of business after the wall fell, leaving a trail of vacant factory and office buildings across the country's cities. Some 20,000 visitors come to Wünsdorf every year to check out the town's military history. Aside from the Forbidden City, The area also still has traces of the Nazis' Third Reich reign, including an elaborate and secretive systems of bunkers. The whole area was militarized after the German Empire was formed in 1871. During the First World War, Germany's first mosque was built here for Muslim POWs, many of whom was coerced into fighting for Germany. Also during World War I, this area had a railway connection. It housed a series of military camps, and with an area of nearly 250,000 square kilometers, it became the largest military complex in Europe. In 1935, Wünsdorf became headquarters for the Wehrmacht, the German armed forces. Known as Maybach I and Maybach II, the Nazis built fake country houses out of concrete that were supposed to disguise underground bunkers that housed the military and army high commands. Each bunker has 4 levels, with 2 underground levels connected to a 600-meter-long tunnel. Each building had a specific mission, with one building used for commanding the Eastern Front, another for intelligence operations, and one for the military of other Axis powers. Many key military figures of the empire were stationed here. The entire World War II campaign of Nazi Germany was directed from the underground communication bunker Zeppelin in Wünsdorf, with direct communication to fronts in Stalingrad, France, the Netherlands, and even Africa. Most of the Maybach complex was destroyed after the end of the war by the Soviets, but the huge underground bunker known as Zeppelin, which served as a communication hub, is still accessible. This was already secretive during the Nazi times. People who lived here, of course, knew that it was somehow related to the military, but they didn't know the details, said Sylvia Reitmarcher, a tour guide referring to the Zeppelin bunker. Under Russian times, this was just unsecretive, or one could say exterritorial. The German territory ended at the walls, she said, adding that the Soviets too used the bunker for communication purposes during the Cold War. The Nazis' buildings were of such strong construction, with walls over a meter thick, that they proved very difficult to damage, a fact evidently appreciated by the Soviets after the SS had fled. After sufficiently damaging the bunker complexes to make them unsuitable for military use according to the Potsdam Agreement, the Soviets settled in. In March 1953, the clearing of houses, post offices, pharmacies, and savings banks began. Approximately 800 residents were resettled, and 30,000 Soviet soldiers were stationed. Afterward, the Soviet Union immediately promoted the local economy and fostered good relations with the people of East Germany. However, the local German population often required permission to enter the place known as Die Verbotenstadt, the Forbidden City. Mr. Norman said, "There are many ways to sneak into the city. East Germans had to bribe soldiers to gain access to the city and purchase essential supplies from the stores within." He mentioned, "You can enter the city, but you have to be cautious and return on time. If you enter in the morning, residents must leave no later than around 4 p.m. Those who miss the deadline will be detained for about a day and have to peel potatoes for the military." When the Soviets handed the Forbidden City back to the federal government, the buildings fell into bureaucratic neglect. Weather has also taken its toll. Norman is now the only person left taking care of an area he estimates to be around 200 hectares. His job now is to check for damage caused by heavy rain or unwanted visitors and to arrange for repairs. For now, the abandoned city plays host to video artists, wedding photographers, or camera buffs with a penchant for abandoned buildings. Photographers can make appointments to visit for a small fee. The government's regional development company is looking for suitable investors to bring the remaining buildings back to life. After so many years in their service, Norman has formed a bond with the old buildings. He speaks enthusiastically of the architect dating back to the German Empire, the workmanship, and the enduring quality of the main building's wooden roof, now more than 100 years old. Walking through the empty rooms, auditoriums, and corridors, one needs a bit of imagination to picture the deserted complex that once housed thousands of people. Light shines down on the pale walls, revealing the peeling paint on the doors, giving the military architecture an atmosphere of nostalgia. Here and there, abandoned objects are found, such as a broken piano lying on the dusty floor. Until this day, the statue of Lenin still stands firmly on its pedestal, reminding passersby of a bygone era that occurred not long ago. Reflecting on what Wünsdorf's military history means to her personally, Raid Marcher paused for a moment, looking at the destroyed Maybach bunkers, and said, "For me, it's a memorial, a warning that one has to teach young people that all of this shall not happen again." And that's all for our program today. Thanks for watching, and please tune in for more stories next time.